Here,
Woohoo!
it being 5:31 and a quorum of the select board attending, I'll call to order the Shelburne Select Board meeting of May 5th, 2025. Um, we have some audience members this evening. All are identified but one user. Could you tell me who user is, please?
Nick Donalo.
Okay, Nick, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. The first item is acceptance of the minutes for the April 22nd meeting. We received them. Two of us supplied some updates. Has everyone had a chance to review them and prepared to act on them this evening?
I saw your update, Rick, and then I sent mine in. So
I saw
with
those as
those
well.
changes, I am happy to accept the new minutes.
Would that be a motion?
Yes, it would be. Sorry. I move to accept the amended minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the updated version of the minutes from the April 22nd meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, matter to a vote. Tricia,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
and I am I. Motion passes 3-0. Department liaison reports. Tricia supplied her uh, updates in writing. We have been doing that to conserve meeting time during the budget season where our meetings were running 2 and 3 hours and multiple nights in a week. So we tried to keep things quick with written ones. They do get published to the website with the so they're always available, but they're in written form. I've reviewed Trisha's. I have no questions or comments. Andrew, any questions or comments?
No.
Any further comments on yours, Trisha?
Yeah, so I did hear back from the senior center on Friday, but I was already out of town. So I can tell you that their budget is being presented at the annual town meeting, our annual town meeting tomorrow. It was presented at Buckland and Ashfields on the 3rd. They acquired their legal counsel. They've secured their accounting firm, payroll, and their liability insurance for the transition. They also got the software confirmed, and the retirement benefits are being transferred seamlessly, as well as the employee insurance. So the other insurance I talked about was the liability insurance. They haven't gotten any appropriate applicants for the two driver openings that they have. They were hoping to hire before July 1st. So they're working with the FRTA on a plan to continue to meet the needs of seniors in West County, but also try to think creatively for how to go forward. And at the senior center itself, the outreach coordinator, Teddy is going to be attending one of the final Shine trainings that helps people with their Medicare and insurance applications. That'll be twice weekly for the next 3 months. It's going to be a lot of benefits to the seniors in Shelburne, but they're going to miss him at the center for sure. So that's all I have for that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Andrew, you did not submit any written. Do you have any verbal for us this evening?
I do, yeah. My just an update on where we are with the Memorial Hall Theater project. We did receive uh, bids, the final bid for that, and which came in within budget. The contract has been awarded, and a construction schedule is being finalized. That project is expected to begin around late May with the removal of the seats and then construction or renovation of the floor and ceiling and painting beginning running June, July, and August, and then installation of the seats in September. So that's the general plan. The overall cost is about $340,000, including the contract we already approved for the seats and about 150,000 for the other work, which is funding that we have actually in hand. So all to the good. And then the plan that you may have seen in the Two-Town News for the disposal of the Take a Seat fundraising campaign will commence on May 10th and end on May 17th, when people can come and pick up the seats that they've designated and paid for. So that is how we will dispose of surplus property if there are people who come forward to do that. And then I met with our highway superintendent today and have his update. They're working in the rainy weather, taking off the plow frames and sanders from the trucks, checking the water flow in the ditches to make sure that the culverts and bleeders and stuff are working properly. The pole barn has a few leaks, but it may be just loose screws that need to be tightened. He did meet with the contractor to look at that. Old Greenfield Road has had one knotweed treatment, and the consultant, Brian Callahan, has said the next knotweed treatment will probably be at the end of May or in June. When the plants stop growing up and start growing out is when they get treated. Jeff is monitoring some erosion in that same area and purchasing some seed with the MassWorks grant. He's installing about 500 feet of guardrail over by the Cosby's place, also with the remaining funds in the MassWorks grant. The crew is preparing for grading of our 7 miles of gravel roads. And that grading will take place when things dry out, but they're doing a lot of the prep work now with the ditches and bleeders, etc. And we did talk about the hiring process, which I guess is on the agenda for later, so I can save that for then, and also about the building maintenance position. So Jeff and I thought we would meet with Terry and see if we can make some progress in better defining what we want to post for a building maintenance position. And what else? Jeff did take action to take down a maple tree on the corner of High and Church Street using our tree warden funding. It was a pretty dead tree that had split. And the FERCog bids for materials opened on Wednesday, so he's going to be moving forward with that. And I think that's about all I got here for the highway. And the Pratt library group has not met, so that's it for me. Oh, and the FERCog did meet. So I did attend the FERCog meeting, and I had a bunch of notes about that, and I have mislaid them. So
Okay.
I won't I won't share those with you.
There's always 2 weeks.
There was a lot of reports on Linda's lobbying efforts in at the State House, and so they're trying to move ahead with, particularly with the Chapter 90 funding formula, and to hopefully our delegation is trying to advance a road miles only formula, which would be more beneficial to rural towns than some of the other funding formulas that have been proposed. So there's one highlight there for you.
Great. Thank you very much. I also submitted my liaison reports in written form. Any questions or comments on those?
Mm-mm.
Hearing none, I also received one new update since we had to submit our things. This came from Chris Demars. He's the director of the Upper Pioneer Valley Veterans Services District, for which I'm the liaison for the town. And they supplied a third quarter fiscal year update. Few of the highlights. The district has recertified all Chapter 115 clients for the first 6 months of fiscal year 2025 as per state law. That's approximately 90 clients. The district purchased and is distributing 94 gross of cemetery flags for Memorial Day. They've also ordered many 3x5 US flags for availability for each town if needed. And they have a large quantity of flag holder markers available and can order more if needed. Do we have any word on who will be handling the flags for Shelburne in absence of our late gentleman?
Yes, we recently appointed Joe Moynihan, and he's going to be enlisting some students from Buckland Shelburne. And then I believe Jeff Cochran from the Veterans District has also offered to help with that effort.
Terrific. You're right. That had slipped my mind. We've had a few things on our plate. The last item of note from them, if towns are having difficulty with replacing the flags, that they have offered to have their volunteers or staff help. So if any of that comes into play for Shelburne, give me a holler and I'll reach out to Chris and we can get some extra help. I think we ordered like 800 flags, if I'm not mistaken, which is a good number every year to get out. And that's all I have there. On to old business. Town-owned tax title properties. Tricia.
Thank you, Rick. Terry, could I please share my screen? So I received a bunch of information on Friday before I went out of town and then got some clarifications today. So I put it all into a presentation so all of us could review this together. And I think it's mostly because let me see, I want to do this because I'm new. So I think you may know a little bit about this already. So you should be seeing my screen that shows Shelburne owned properties. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's look at the overview of the cost. So the total lost revenue to the town, because I know this was a concern for you and also for many townspeople who might not be aware that the total lost revenue for these properties plus the costs incurred was including, like demolition and everything was $443,141. And if those properties were actually possessed by someone other than the town, the taxes would total $7,587 just for, fiscal year 25. So that brings to all of that to a total of $450,728. The lost revenue of the $443,000 includes taxes and interest, plus the demolition costs where applicable. I've noted with a green asterisk the 3 properties where there were demolitions. So that would be the 3 that are kind of in the middle of the screen, 49 Mechanic, 375 Main, and 379 Main. And you'll notice I'm going to be referring to these properties by their actual addresses instead of the name of the previous property owner because it's more meaningful, I think, for people who might be watching online to understand what properties we're actually talking about. So this also is broken down by those properties in the same order, what we would we could receive this year just as is with no structures on them in taxes, and that totals $7,587 and change. Some of the properties are larger, some are smaller, and that's why you see these differences in assessed value. Just so people understand the dates of acquisition and other details, you can see that some of these properties we've owned for many, many years, 10 years even. In this one on One Brook Road. This shows the feet of frontage that each one has and the number of acres, and that's important for later when we're talking about what to do with them. So what could we do with them? Some possible actions are to auction them off, create some kind of municipal development for them. So that could include making them into a park, a community garden, open space, something like that. That would require a lot of interaction with the town to figure out what to do with them, getting grant funding, et cetera, which is not out of the ordinary. I think open space could probably do something, or recreation, all of those things it's possible to get grants for, but I don't know that they know that those properties could be utilized for that. So I just want that to be publicly known. Or we could develop affordable housing or pursue affordable housing on any property. The new bylaws that were passed 2 years ago require 50 feet of frontage. And then generally, a contractor will want to have a sewer connection on the property to mitigate or minimize their costs. So let's talk about each one of those options and what it means to the town. So for auction, there's no cost to the town in terms of the auction itself because the auction fees are added to the buyer's sales bid for the total cost. So for example, if the auctioneer, if we were to do this, charged 4% for the sale and the bid was $100,000, then the town gets $100,000 and the auctioneer gets $4,000 from the seller, from the buyer. The town gets exactly what the bid was, and the extra fees for the auctioneer get tacked on to that price. The buyer's premium ranges, so the premium I'm talking about is what the auctioneer gets. That ranges from anywhere from 2% to 6% based on a survey that Terry did last week of other towns who've recently undergone some auctions. Right now, the way the rules are, there's no minimum bid required for properties that were acquired before the 1st of November 2024, which is when all the rules changed about town-owned properties or tax title taken properties. And the town can reject any bids that they deem inadequate. So if somebody doesn't give us what we think we should get for the property, we can just say no thanks. The only fee that I think we would incur outside of normal business would be to pay the tax title attorney or our town council to prepare the deeds and documents required. Angel thought she may spend like 5 to 6 hours in a year on doing this type of activity. It seems minimal regarding the assessors. They would just need to update the maps when the title changed, but they would do that anyway. And Terry's work, I think, would be very minimal, if anything. The municipal development ideas, these were just things that came to me. This would, if we were to decide to pursue this, we would, obviously have to have some meetings with townspeople and see what they would like to do. But the ones that I thought of were having open space, maybe a community garden, maybe an orchard. We could have a playground. We could make a park or something else. And then affordable housing, like I said earlier, it requires 50 feet of street frontage per the new bylaws. And generally it needs to be on the sewer system. And there is no property that the town owns that meets both of those criteria. So for example, 49 Mechanic Street lacks the frontage. This is from the assessor's map that the assessor's office actually uses online. It has the capacity to measure the length, which I did here. You can see I used measure length on the right side of your screen for 49 Mechanic Street, and it's coming out as 43.64 feet of frontage. And 379 Main Street was also a property that was considered that it might be buildable only if it was merged with 375 Main Street, because that one actually is on a septic, but because there were houses there before, the thought was maybe it could still work, but there are those site constraints that it wouldn't work without merging those two properties. So that's what I have. And what I would like to do is have a discussion about what to do with the properties that we have, because I think fiscally we need to perhaps make better choices with these properties than just hanging on to them. Because like I said, we're losing up to $8,000 every year, and we could be using that money, for example, to help fund the library or help do the maintenance when the town hall mini splits fail again, or we need to buy a new tractor or something for the highway department. So that's what I know. I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts.
Well, I thank you for that presentation this evening. I previously to your term was liaison to town hall, and I took that chore on, and I know I handed it off to you when you came aboard and took over the liaison for town hall, because I too felt we should just move forward and auction some of these properties and get them back on the tax rolls. But a short year, and there's just not enough time to get everything done, and therefore it ended up in your court, and thank you for pursuing that. We also had some feedback at our last meeting from a residential abutter to one of the properties, asking when did the public give input on these things specifically, for the purpose of turning them over potentially to an affordable housing process, Habitat for Humanity as an example. And gentleman was correct. We kind of just assumed, based on a zoning bylaw change, that the town supported that idea, but never did we put it out and hold a public session to discuss it and find out, in fact, if the public was interested in pursuing that. Same thing holds true for the auction. We would need to do that process in the coming year, obviously, in the coming fiscal year, to get public input, hold meetings to find out if the voting public supports the idea of auctioning them or turning them specifically into a park. So, or some other use, open space even. So I think it's something that definitely we need to attack over the next year, and I appreciate you pulling all that information together. Great. Andrew, any comments?
Yeah, I do have a few. The Tricia, if you want to put your slides back up again, we could run through them. That would make my commentary more relevant to what your slides presented.
Okay, just a moment.
While you pull that up, I've had, since our last meeting, other people in town contact me about the information that was discussed regarding the donation of the property and putting more money into the already amount of money that we've put into them to end up with an affordable housing unit. So people are listening and watching, and that's great. And I would certainly like more feedback myself. But okay,
Mhm.
have your slide up.
So if we can move forward, move forward. So um, on these properties, one just note there in the demolition costs. I don't know about 49 Mechanic Street because that was demolished over probably 20 years ago. The other two on Main Street, that funding that we used to demolish it was grant funding. So there is a distinction that would be useful to make there in terms of the revenue that the town has, lost revenue. That's you can't really lose grant money in that same way, if the grant is dedicated to that purpose. Um, so if you go to your next slide, the assessed values of those properties, again, the three in the middle, Mechanic, and the two on Main Street, um, are those assessments are based on houses having formerly been placed on those lots and them being taxed accordingly with a house and then that amount of value being assessed to the land under a house. But if those lots are not buildable, the assessed value of the land would decline markedly. I'm not as familiar with the Brook Road, the Fisk Mill, or the South Shelburne properties in terms of whether they have any potential to have housing built upon them or not. But that sort of brings me to the next um, question, which is how much you can get in taxes for them really depends on what you can do with them. Um, so if we were to auction those properties today, it would be up to the buyer to determine whether they could put a house back on them. If that buyer were not an affordable housing developer, in the case of 40 and 30, or 2, 16, and 15 in terms of lot numbers, um, then their value would be only probably what you could persuade an abutter to buy them for, to expand the size of their lawn. Um, and so I think I would say there's a large grain of salt in both assessed value and tax value of those properties. Again, I don't really have much information about the other three, so you could speak to those, Tricia. Um, the other, so that goes to the question of the $10,000 that I've proposed to put on the warrant to explore the developability of 49 Mechanic Street. Um, one of the questions is certainly the frontage. You claim it's 44 feet. I actually walked it off and found about 65 feet by my rough estimate walking. But I think that that's where a survey might actually help us determine the difference between 44 and 65, in terms of what number is actually true in terms of that lot size. That again has to do with, going before the Conservation Committee and determining, is there a wetland on that property? We've received some advice on that already, but more work to be done, and then from there to the environmental assessment. So all of those are steps in the process of determining value, so that even if the town rose up and said, no, we don't want any more affordable housing in Shelburne, bylaw be darned, then we would want to know if we were going to auction the property, are we auctioning a buildable lot or are we auctioning a piece of lawn for the abutter? And there's a pretty big difference there. It's like going to a tag sale and buying a $50 painting and finding out it was worth $50,000. So I think the town does have some prudent interest in determining what these properties are worth before we go to auction, and that includes finding out, can something be done with them, or are they just little patches of lawn? Um, so those are my comments in terms of why one would invest housing trust fund money in the process of determining buildability of our tax title lots. And I would just note by way of information for the fact that we have proposed using our housing trust fund perhaps for the first time for actual housing purposes. Most of our other purposes for housing trust fund money have not been for housing purposes.
Okay, so I have a few comments about that. I did speak with Karen about the assessed values, and she was very clear about how the values have changed because there are no longer houses on those properties. And I went back and actually looked at the previous assessments and saw that the assessments went down. So they're not as high as they used to be. And so that's part one of your one of the things that you said. I also think that if we can't operate with kind of what we think might happen or might have happened. The fact is, if you want to go with, you walked it off and saw it was 65 feet, or I'm using an actual map that the assessors have that says it's 44 feet of frontage, clearly what needs to happen is a survey. Normally, when a piece of property changes hands, there is a survey involved. Now, it hasn't been the town's practice to have a survey when they take possession of tax title properties. And as far as we know, there aren't any surveys for any of these properties. So the question is, if we decide to move forward to auction them off, then perhaps what has to be part of the sale or the contingency is that the new owners will pay for a survey. Now, or they could say, we're interested in it, and we say, you'll have to do a survey, so we aren't responsible for that. But the town shouldn't be responsible for the survey if we haven't been responsible yet. And normally in regular business practices, it's the buyer that has to do it to make sure everything's in order. In my opinion, a survey is probably a lot cheaper. I believe it's cheaper than any kind of environmental assessment we might have to do for a property that may not even be able to be developed because the frontage is wrong. And it's not just like any person can go there and measure it. It has to be done by a surveyor. So if Habitat for Humanity, for example, for 49 Mechanic Street, is really interested in building an affordable housing unit there or units, then they should be doing a survey to find out if it actually can comply with the new bylaw for affordable housing. If it is indeed 50 feet or greater, then they can pursue the next steps, which would be the environmental assessments or determining if there's wetlands, which is more expensive. And that's something that maybe the town has to pay for, but I don't see that we need to spend any more money on any of these properties because we're losing money even as is. This is what Karen says we would be getting in fiscal year 25 in taxes for those properties. And that, that number of $7,500, that is, we're losing this year, we'll lose next year. On top of the $443,000 we already have lost on those properties. I just don't see what waiting any longer on these properties is accomplishing. I honestly don't. There's nothing that we're doing that benefits the town.
I
We're
think
losing money.
I think one of the differences between Andrew's take and your take on the assessed value is that it doesn't matter at all what it gets sold for. So if, as an example, one of them was assessed at 100,000 and it got sold at auction for $500, it's going to be taxed at 100,000, not $5. So it's, I think, Trisha's estimates are more accurate than you're trying to lead us to believe there. But I think one of the real easy first steps, we had an issue with a resident downtown and question about a retaining wall and who owned it. And it took me 8 minutes to go on the registry of deeds, pull up the history of deeds, bang, 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 print them off, and they clearly told how many feet on each lot line. That could be done in a matter of minutes for Mechanic Street to find out what the deed actually says as one step that wouldn't cost anything to do. Tricia.
I've actually done that. I
Oh,
called the Registry of Deeds. Sorry, and I'm glad you brought that up because I failed to mention it earlier. I called the Registry of Deeds because I couldn't find it at Mass Land Records. I went through all the deeds there, and all it says is go from the corner of the school district's property to the corner of the one on Church Street, go to the back where the brook is, and go back the other way until they all meet. So it uses, like thence go there and thence go that, go southwest, go however. So there are property lines delineated, but there's nothing with actual measurements and there were no surveys. So I did check those.
right.
So I would say as long as we've brought up the that $10,000 fee for the or the article that's not going to be on the warrant, I am strongly recommending that we pass that over because I don't see that there is a need to spend any more town money on a property that is likely not buildable just based on zoning bylaws, which don't cost us anything. If somebody's interested in buying that property, then they can get the survey and find out what they can do with it.
Great.
Do
Any
you have
further
another?
question? Andrew.
I would say again, the $10,000 that I have proposed putting on that warrant is an up to amount that proceeds in a step-by-step fashion through each, go, no go question. So that's step one of that process. The other is that the 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 ordinary sort of sequence of events that you describe and talk about when you talk about disposing of property uh, do apply to sort of regular commercial transactions. But when you as a town are interested in promoting or developing affordable housing, you kind of do it in whatever fashion creates that affordability. So some towns have no land to dispose of and have very high housing costs. And so their version of using their Community Preservation Act funds to promote affordable housing, which is one of their three obligations under that law, is to provide subsidies to first-time home buyers and basically just write down the cost of their housing. That's one pretty common approach to creating affordability. That doesn't happen in commercial transactions. That's basically saying the gap is what makes things unaffordable is a gap between incomes and housing costs. And so we're going to write that down. Um, all of the things that we're describing, whether it's donating a piece of property or doing the pre-development work upon it prior to that donation, is just another way of writing down the cost, the eventual cost of the land and the building that will be transferred to a lower or moderate income homeowner. That's
Okay, I
so
understand that, but we're talking about spending money on there's a warrant article on the town warrant that is for an environmental assessment. And I think in this case, we're putting the cart before the horse, like way before the horse. If that survey comes back, or if somebody can identify a survey for that property that shows that it is less than 50 feet, then there is nothing getting built on that property.
That's right.
But,
So that would be probably step one, is to do a survey.
well, that's not what the warrant article says. It says it's for an environmental assessment.
Well, I had put a little menu of pre-development costs that I think Terry might have shortened there in that process of describing that article. But to me, those, whether it's a wetlands delineation or a survey or an environmental assessment, those are all the steps in determining buildability.
But you
And
never
take
once
them,
mentioned the frontage, and the frontage is an absolute no-go for this property as far as we can tell based on current
well,
information.
you also said that to me about the wetlands issue, and then we went and got a wetland specialist to come walk the property and determined, from his estimation, that the wetland is 300 feet away.
You got a wetland specialist to go
Right.
there,
That's what
not
I'm saying.
we.
Is I'm
You
just saying
said
that
we. You
Hey,
said
Paul.
we. You
you,
got that wetland specialist, and Mark Stinson from Environmental Protection also said that he thinks it needs to have a special assessment, not just somebody walking there and saying it. It needs to have
oh,
the
if the
ground
Concom wants a
sampling.
wetland delineation, then we should do that as one of our steps.
And as I mentioned at the last meeting, the Concom said they would like to do what Mr. Stinson suggests.
Fine.
But
So we'll
before we
take them
do
in those
that,
steps.
but before we do that, we should be doing a survey or have
That's
somebody pay for the survey
I have
for
no
this
objection to
property.
doing them in that order. That's the process that I laid out, was do it in the sequence of steps that will allow you to spend the least amount of money to determine buildability.
But I
So
don't
if you
recall
get
ever
knocked out on
hearing
step one,
survey.
if you get knocked out on step one, you don't proceed to step two.
Well, the problem is that it's not laid out as a plan. It's all, we think we'll do this, we think we'll do this, we could do this. The warrant I have in front of me is very specific. It doesn't say up to. It is a
We're
specific,
not allowed to say up to.
correct, but you used that word minutes ago. And it talks about the uh, the cap amount of 10,000. And to me, that's the tip of the iceberg. Let's say that we followed this and we had a survey. Okay, it's over 50 feet. We have the wetlands. We have that. Okay, got that done. We pay the estimated 8 grand, and the estimate, who knows where that came from. We have no quotes to base this stuff on, but you provided a figure of 8,000 for the first phase 1 of environmental study. So that's not a lot left of that 10,000 after the first 8 grand. The paperwork from Habitat for Humanity that I have, that you also have received, says that if there's anything found in that, then they require phase 2 to kick in. So we could easily spend the 8 grand, say, ruh-roh, and need to cough up another 10 grand for a phase 2, and we don't have it. So again, it's all predicated on the assumption that that's what the town wants to happen with that property, and to add more expense than has already happened. But this is on the warrant. It'll get passed over or acted on, one or the other, and we'll find out tomorrow night. But I think we've given it a good overview for folks at this point.
Well, I think you all gave me quite a going over about not having spent more time on this issue before bringing it to you. So I will bring that back to you and say, Tricia, if you want to do the homework on the other 3 properties at Brook Road and Fisk Mill, et cetera, and explain to us what their potential is for all the different purposes that you've brainstormed, we should have that discussion on a detailed, basis, and say,
Absolutely.
what are these properties and what are their dimensions and what are their potential problems, and what kind of benefit can the town of Shelburne and its residents gain from them or should we just auction them and see who comes forward? I'm happy to have that discussion. But we have, you've been kind of giving me the business on 49 Mechanic Street, which there is an affordable housing developer interested in. So I have been pursuing it to the extent that I'm able and proposing resources to continue that process so that we can hand it over for the purposes for which the voters voted for that bylaw, which is to develop affordable housing on non-conforming lots. That's the process that we've been engaged in over the last couple of years that is now moving forward. But if you want to take that process forward to auction or to, further development by the town on those other three properties, please have at it.
I mean, I think what Rick was saying too is true about, there was a decision made about this is what we're going to do with these properties. I was outlining the various things we could do with them. And I think the town has to decide, do they even want to have a house built on 49 Mechanic as opposed to other things? You raised a valid point. What could be done with all of the vacant properties that the town owns? The answer is we don't know because nobody's ever really looked into it for any of them. And then it's just been that somehow you found out that Habitat was interested in maybe building a house, but I reviewed the notes from the meeting when the woman from Habitat, and she mentioned specifically getting a survey. And I think that if they're really interested, they should pay for a survey. And then if the survey comes through that it's 50 feet or more, then they can go ahead. But I think it might be possible that they're considering that that lot might not be big enough and somebody needs to find out. And what I'm saying is it might not be in the best interest of the town for us to spend any more money. We've already lost almost $500,000 on it, and it's not like money's growing on trees anywhere. And we have a bunch of tax delinquencies now. So I foresee having other properties that might come up for having to be taken again. And one thing I didn't mention was, if it's big enough, maybe it would be a really great place to develop a co-housing development where people could figure out, just have a large well, have a septic system that worked, something like at Dragon Hill where they have a huge well pump and everybody pays a little bit in housing fees. That would be maybe a more dynamic solution than just building one house here or there. And I think the town needs to be more involved. The residents of the town should be involved in this process, and they haven't been, as far as I can tell. And I'm just sharing information that I found that was available, and also, from what I knew from planning board. And I will mention that I only have one more select board meeting with you all. So I wanted to make sure that I finished this task too and put it before you. And then hopefully my successor can pick it up. And with this outline, which I'll make available, which is why I wanted to do this as a presentation during a meeting so everybody can look at it and we're all operating with the same set of facts.
I think we've covered it pretty well. Andrew, you mentioned the potential use of the others. As I said, I worked on this in my first year when I handed it over to Tricia. I've visited and walked them all. I think Brook Road is a perfect timber lot. It's definitely not buildable. There's no services there, not even electricity. I think Coles or other company like that buys land for periodic harvesting is a potential buyer. The South Shelburne Road looks buildable and timber worthy to me because it does have power, etc. And the other one, is it Sarah Fisk?
No, not Sarah Fisk.
Fisk something.
Fisk Mill Road.
Fisk Mill Road, yeah. Thank
I've been to
you.
that, and that also is full of timber, and also looks potentially buildable. But it's also fair to note that we received the Finance Committee's recommendations and their comment. I can release that information, Terry. That they've written up the Finance Committee's recommendations on the warrants, and they are recommending a no vote on the $10,000 from the Housing Trust Fund to pursue that as well. So as I said, it'll be dealt with tomorrow evening, and appreciate the work you did, Tricia, and handing it off.
you.
We can move on to our next item.
Thank you.
That being town hall generator installation. Excuse me. As you know, we appropriated $9,900 and something to, not appropriated, committed to put the generator in town hall. The town hall had been previously wired for a generator. The contractor came in, viewed what was already installed, matched that to the generator kilowatt hours, which I believe is 14, if memory serves me right. Did the installation, and everything looks great. I've inspected it. Then Terry and I met there with Cerner, technician for the propane hookup. Cerner is the town's propane vendor for the police station propane and generator that's there. So it made sense to talk to them as well. The technician came out, took measurements. Looks like a pretty straightforward two small 100-pound, they call them, tanks, which I believe is 50 gallons each. In any event, recommended that as the proper size for the kilowatt hours of the generator. Found an appropriate spot to set them, and will be providing a quote that has not as yet come in. Highway laborer position, but I believe I saw Deborah Andrews' hand up. It's not normal that we take feedback or comments from people on items we're deliberating on. Anyone have a feeling one way or the other, whether we should let her speak now or wait until public comment? Andrew,
I mean, we're going to be doing the very tedious business of assigning the town warrant articles, and everybody would have to wait through till that. So maybe when we finish the new business or the other item on new business, then we can open up for comments. That would be my thought.
You mean the other item on old business?
Oh, we still have the thing from Christopher Curtis about the Woodlands Partnership Grant in new business, and then the assignment of town meeting articles. I guess I was saying put it in there, but I think it would be best to get the comments in now while we can.
Andrew, your thoughts?
That's fine.
Deborah, did you had a comment? Remember, you're muted. There you go. What is your comment on?
Very, very, very briefly, after listening to all the conversation about the various lots the town owns, it occurred to me that if affordable housing is a concern, that the town could auction these off in a way that not precluded, that's not the correct word. Let me change that around. So that those who could least afford to buy property at this time might now be able to afford. And I'm not sure how to do that, but I think it could be done.
Okay. Thank you for that comment. And now you don't have to wait till public comment if you don't.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it tremendously.
It's going to be a while. So go ahead back and remute, please, if you would. So let's finish up old business. Highway laborer position. You mentioned, Andrew, that you had information on that from your meeting today with Jeff.
Jeff is recommending that we re-advertise the position.
Okay. We did have 3 or 4 or 5 applicants, I forget. We interviewed 2. One pulled out after the first session of interviews prior to the actual testing, live testing at the yard. The remaining applicant did the live testing, but we're not sure why. Didn't like the pay scale, something, have no idea why, but turned down the offer of the position. So it's definitely time to re-advertise. So Terry, will you take that forward? Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Andrew, you also mentioned old business, building maintenance. Let's push that down to new business, since it really is new. We haven't really had any deliberation or discussion on that. So let's go on to new business and make that our first item. Building maintenance. The only thing we've done in my 2 years of term so far was get a copy of Buckland's building maintenance agreement. And I'm thinking if Buckland can afford a building maintenance person, so can Shelburne. Obviously, it's nothing that we could do this year. It would have to be dealt with or pursued in the next fiscal year, since there's no funding for it in fiscal year 26 in our warrant for tomorrow night. So it is a matter that I would like to see pursued, because it's crazy that we don't have somebody that is responsible for going to all the different buildings, keeping them up, changing locks, doing routine maintenance, cleaning the gutters, the scups up on the roofs, that we have to pull our town highway people off of their work to come in and take care of it. So it's definitely an item I would like to see pursued. But it may be futile to start the discussion about it now. What are your thoughts, Tricia?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We should have someone doing that role, but now is not the time to figure it out.
Andrew, do you agree, or do you have comments you'd like to share?
Well, we do currently have $26,000 in a line item for building and grounds, which we use for winter sidewalk snow clearing and summer lawn maintenance in various parts of town. And we have 2 different gentlemen who do that work, both of whom are getting up there in years. So that is partly what's driving this issue, is thinking about a succession plan that brings those activities together, perhaps with other activities that include what you just mentioned, Rick, and perhaps even also some, handyman kind of work, of actually making small repairs where needed or things like that. So the project of putting together a job description and figuring out how to fund it is one that we could undertake this year, and then allocate the appropriate amount of funding towards once we have come to agreement about what it is we want done and whether that set of skills can be found in one person or not. And is it a benefited position or a non-benefited position? All of those kinds of questions.
I think we have Buckland's as a model to start from as well. So my understanding is that building and maintenance line item that you're discussing, is that something like, I mean, we put in these very expensive, we call them mini splits, but they're not mini by any stretch, at Town Hall and Cowell, and they've been nothing but trouble. They're like 4 years old, and we've had 4 major, or 3 or 4 major failures of the one at Town Hall alone, with Freon leaks. Now we have a complete compressor failure with one at Town Hall. Isn't that money used to cover expenses like that, or no?
If in fact the actual operating budget for the building can't cover it, we do take funding from buildings and grounds. In
Okay.
addition to the part-time salaries for snow removal, mowing, we do allocate money in that budget for expenditures, unforeseen expenditures.
So I think it's definitely worth pursuing, and we should uh, put that in someone's lap when we get reorganized for the next fiscal year in a couple weeks. Okay, next item on new business. Christopher Curtis sent a request for a letter of support for the Woodlands Partnership Grant. He sent that to the Open Space Committee. The Open Space Committee met, reviewed, and approved a recommendation be sent to us that we sign the proposed letter, which is on your packet dated May 5th, hence today's date, with a approval of the select board for me to sign that letter of support to, let's see, letter of support for the Connecticut River Conservancy in partnership with Deerfield River Watershed Association, application for Woodlands Partnership Grant for a regional actions to protect the Deerfield River and its tributaries. That's it in a nutshell. It's pretty straightforward, basically the support of a grant application. Doesn't commit us to anything beyond that, but certainly helps them continue some funding to pursue this project, which we have previously voted to support through our town representative to that group. Any thoughts or comments from what you read in your packet?
Yeah, I read the letter and I think it's a great way to protect the river in the uncertain times we're in for federal funding. I especially like how they're focusing on regional and state initiatives, zoning and cooperation. So I think we should definitely lend our support to this and sign the letter of support for the grant application.
Would that be a motion?
Yes, I move that we accept it, that
Second.
we sign the letter of support.
So it has been moved and seconded to authorize me to sign this letter of support for the grant. Now, any discussion? Andrew, any comments? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We'll put the matter to a vote. Tricia?
Aye.
Andrew? And I am aye. The motion passes 3-0. And that completes the easy part to new business. And we're on to the last item in it, which is the assignment of annual town meeting warrant articles. Traditionally, the 3 select board members do a rotation of the articles. Some of us have versions that were more, or articles in which we're more informed or have been shepherding, etc., and would like to be able to present. So that is the purpose of this discussion, to figure out who would like to present which article, and we'll go through all of them now. Where would you like to begin?
At the beginning.
At the beginning. All right. This one I can't remember for the life of me. Article 1, to hear the annual reports of the officers of the town and to act thereon. I don't remember that from previous ones. Do we actually take a vote on that or ask the people to vote? Or is it just a formality?
It's a formality.
Okay. So there's no motion that needs to be made.
I believe for every single one, someone will say so move second, and then
It goes
it's
to a
voted
vote.
on. Yes.
Okay. So
You're basically voting to accept the annual town report as presented each year.
which we received at our last meeting and will be available there tomorrow evening as well for the rest of the folks. Correct?
Yes, it's been out in circulation since it was received by the town.
Okay. I'll take that.
Okay.
Good. Article 2, which is to see if the town will vote to set the salaries of the elected officials. Anyone?
I can do that one since a lot of these are town offices.
True.
You know,
As liaison to town hall, you're perfect for that. Article 3. Or Andrew, you okay with that?
Yeah, 1 through 8 or 7 are boilerplate, so
Right.
it's just doesn't
You,
really matter.
all right. I agree. So let's just keep the rotation. Andrew will do 3. I will do 4. Tricia will do 5. Andrew will do 6. I will do 7. What? Gotta get
I'm
through.
glad you got 7. You got the big one.
Yeah, thanks. All right. And where was I? Okay, I'm on 8. So now we're back to Tricia for 8. And you said through 9 you felt was boilerplate? Yes.
No, I said through 7.
Through 7. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Well,
So
7 is not exactly boilerplate, but it is appropriate for the chair to lead us through the budget.
then Article 8. You want to break the rotation or stay on it?
I don't know a lot about the Quintus Allen Trust Fund. That's just, I guess what I'm saying here is we're going to split the amount that the capital budget for the school needs by allocating $500 from the Quintus Allen Trust Fund and the rest from.
I would actually recommend that we leave Article 8 for our school committee representatives because they typically move the school-related articles.
Oh, good. Yeah, that makes sense.
So
I would say for 8 and 9, let them move those articles.
but we would I would need to ask, perhaps as chair, ask the moderator to recognize them from the floor on these 2 articles when they come up. I mean, we just can't wait and hope they say, oh, I'll take that, right?
I can reach out to Willow or Jason and see if they'd be speaking to the school articles.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if they're not, we need a plan.
Okay.
Yeah,
guess.
they've never not spoken to
Okay.
them. They're
Okay.
both residents of the town, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Article 10.
I'm happy to speak to Osro Miller.
Good with me. You, Tricia,
Yep,
you
that's good. Yep.
Article
Thank
11,
you.
all gym user fee account. I'd be happy to do that. I'm familiar with it. I've attended several of their meetings. I know that they have given their support for that, but if anyone else would prefer to take it, I'm fine too. Okay.
Oh, that's fine.
Article 12, revolving fund accounts.
This
That's
is to,
just boilerplate every
Mhm.
year.
I can do that one, I guess.
Article 13, capital expenditures, includes the tech school, roof repair, stabilization, municipal vehicle, highway equipment stabilization account for the equipment, police station. Do these get spoken to individually by the finance committee, by the department head?
Nope, this is another article that's on every year, and it's generally capital requests that either are on a payment plan or ongoing.
Okay.
The only one that has gotten any sort of discussion in the course of our budget process has been the last one about the emergency generator. But if we are, I don't know, somebody wants to speak to that discussion or not. The rest of them, as Terry said, are just mini stabilization funds that we're funding or payments that we're making.
Okay.
I
What-
can talk about the emergency generator. So
Actually, I spoke to Tom Williams today and
Oh, good.
he'll be capable. So I'll take 13 and see if Tom cares to speak to the last. Work for you?
Yep.
Article 14. This is the food pantry item.
I can speak to that if you want.
Andrew, I think that would be perfect.
And there will be someone from the food pantry there if questions come up.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. Article 15, Cowell Gym maintenance and repair account to be used for a variety of improvement projects. This was the one.
Before you go on to 15, Terry, do you know offhand that just to confirm that Buckland approved its piece of this?
Yes, Buckland is using leftover funds from a prior CDBG
Oh, right. Okay.
project.
Yeah.
And it does say that in the Warren article that Buckland is paying their share.
Yes, as matched by the town of Buckland.
Okay.
In that.
Yeah. Okay. Just to clarify what that means.
Okay, Article 15 is those things that we talked about that John Walsh presented us. The gymnasium floor that has the dead spots and needs repairs. The tab room, which is the unheated equipment room with the door that goes to air on the second floor being sealed off, and repairs to the sill of that tab room, which is decaying due to the poor exterior siding conditions, and bleachers. This is something that John will probably be able to speak to in attendance. So if you wish, I or either of you can take it and just have the moderator recognize John. And if he's not there, speak to it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Why don't you ask the moderator to recognize John, and if he's not there, go ahead, because you did the other thing for the cowl, Rick. That makes sense to me.
Andrew, you good with that?
Yep.
Article 16. See if the town will vote to approve the purchase of the interceptor police vehicle. This was something that's has been in the plan. It's the final one, and actually, interestingly, as police liaison and the joint group from Buckland and Shelburne that oversee it as well. With the two accidents that have happened with cruisers, I think all in the last 12 months, and those cruisers being replaced primarily, if not all, with insurance, that this one is a 2014 cruiser that definitely needs to go and would then be a breather period for us where we wouldn't need to look at it for the next year or two, because all of the vehicles would be up to snuff, in that the rotation of the olders has been interrupted by having two new ones come in the last 12 months due to accidents. Would anyone prefer to present this other than myself? It's a case I could also recognize the chief as well if he wants to speak to it.
Yeah, I think the chief would be good to do this.
So I will ask the moderator to recognize the chief on that one. Article 17, approve the purchase of bulletproof vests. Same thing?
Same. I think so.
18, this is Highway Department. Andrew, right?
Yeah, I can do that.
And 19, Andrew,
Yeah.
the other truck. Oh, the
And
third,
20.
take
The
those
plow.
18, 19, and 20.
Okay.
Okay. As the liaison to the Highway Department, that makes total sense. Article 21 is the Rural Downtown Coordinator Pilot Project. You recall we did get Buckland to share with us equal amounts to extend it from 12 months to 18, I believe. We bought 6 extra months by that 4,000 per group. I think Northfield was 4,000, Turner's 4,000, and they wanted 4,000 from us in Buckland, but we got them to agree to 2,000 and 2,000 since we really share the same downtown area. Who would like to present that? Tricia?
Sure, I can do that.
Give Andrew a breather after 3.
I know, right?
I would just note that Jeff Johnston did say that he plans to attend the meeting. So if he wants to provide detail on those 3 articles as like the police chief, he can be recognized to do that.
Right. We'll leave that in your court.
Okay.
Perfectly. Okay, Article 22 is your housing trust fund. This is basically your baby, Andrew. You'll take the presentation of that.
All right.
Article
And Terry, I'm just curious on that question. Since I'm now seeing, as Rick has pointed out, that you have shortened my list of things to just be the environmental assessment. I'm just wondering about the take any other action relative thereto. Can that language be used to expound upon the list of tasks that would be included in that pre-development process?
I think you could ask for an amendment. When that article was discussed, it was wetland delineation and environmental assessment. There was no mention of a survey at that time. Otherwise, I would have listed each item.
Okay. I will do that. I agree with Tricia that we should take the tasks in the order of priority in which they should move forward so that we don't spend funds unnecessarily.
Yeah.
I don't recall in my previous town meetings an item being passed over, although it may have happened, but it wasn't enough for me to remember it. Tricia, you had mentioned the possibility of thinking that should happen. Mechanically, how does that process work?
I think you make a motion, right?
At what point is my question.
You would make that motion before or as an amendment to the motion. The way the process works is the moderator asks if somebody would like to move Article 22. And then since I've been assigned to that article, I would say I move that article. Is there a second? It's been seconded. And then Tricia steps forward and says, I would like to offer an amendment that we pass over this article. And somebody seconds that, and then the moderator says, all right, discuss. Why are we passing over it?
Okay. Thank you for that, Eric.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Eric.
Yes.
Now I named you.
You guys and the names.
That's hysterical. Andrew, thank you for that explanation. You're the seasoned veteran here for town meetings. All right, we're on to Article 23. Again, cowl fees. This is the outdoor courts. They 21,000 to pull from their already existing account for the refurbishing, and I believe it's actual expansion by 1 court, as was explained to us. Would you like me to take that one as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Recognize Norm. Okay. I'll ask the moderator to recognize Norman. Article 24. Community Preservation Fund. These next
I would assume Will Flanders would move those.
I was thinking the same thing.
so Tricia, do you want to ask the moderator to recognize Will Flanders?
Yes. For 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28. Can I ask ask the moderator to recognize Will for 24 through 28
As
all
they,
at once, or do we have to do it individually?
they'll need to be voted on individually, but you may
Right.
just ask him for the next four, although he's juggling things there too. If you ask and he doesn't remember, you can help him.
Okay, thank you.
Keep him on track to refer those to Will to present. Item 29, Article 29, transfer of free cash to the unrestricted. This is another routine boilerplate item that happens every year, correct?
Yes.
Terry,
Andrew?
one thing that I don't know if you've done this in past years, but if you want to just give our moderator our annotated list here, that might just help him move along more smoothly.
I can try.
Okay.
I'll certainly give him a list, whether or not he has the time to refer to it with each article. It's typically whoever makes the first motion is who he recognizes.
Okay. Then again, a boilerplate routine there. Andrew, would you like to present that?
Are we talking about Article 30 now?
No, 29.
Oh, 29. Sure.
30. That's your bailiwick anyway, correct? Andrew?
Those next three are all sewer commission articles. We could get our newest sewer commissioner to move those, but I'll say yes to them for now and see if he wants to do that.
So that's
Or our chair. I don't know if Matt Marchese is planning to attend the meeting. I think Matt Larrabee said he would, so I'm happy to spread the wealth there.
okay. As they come up, if they are there for you to ask the moderator to recognize them, I think that's great through
Yeah.
29, 30, 31, and 32. Article 33, to vote the following language to the general bylaws. This is an easy one. Tricia, as a former planning board member, would you like to pass this off to Mr. Wheeler?
Yes. This is 33.
And 34.
33 is the one from John Taylor, though.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But I'm happy to pass it off to him. And then I can do 34 to John Wheeler.
Yes. Good catch. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. And so you're going to do 34 to John Wheeler. Tricia?
Yes, and I can also do 35, same way. That's the short-term rental. And then I think there's one more for them.
35.
They have several. So let's see, they have 35 and then I'm missing 36.
36
There
is
it
at the
is.
bottom of that table. It's
Yeah.
EDU article.
Right. So I can give that to them too. And I think they also had, yep, so this is the best things, the battery storage, that's also to them. So I can do that to John Wheeler as well.
I saw some communications actually. I think one of those will get not to John, but maybe should start with John, and I think he's going to hand it off to Paul Hollings. On at least
Okay, and maybe Faith for this one, because
as
I think she worked on this one.
I think
Okay,
handing it off to John as the chair and then let him offer who
pass.
to speak to it. Makes sense.
Okay. All right.
Those are long ones, aren't they?
Yeah, they're huge. That one's several pages. The I'm still
Oh.
scrolling.
Faster than I can go through my paper ones, but here we go.
Article 38 is on page 23.
This one being
Oh, the personal exemption for veterans.
I'll be happy to do that as liaison to the Veteran Services Center, if that's good with you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we'd have any representation from it, so I'll be prepared to speak to that.
Okay.
And 39.
Bob Dean intends on attending to speak to that article if questions arise.
Perfect.
I'd be happy to recognize him as the liaison to the FERCA.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
My only question, Terry, is there going to be some kind of a handout at the meeting with all that paper?
Yes,
Okay, because that's a lot of paper.
sure is.
Okay.
Another task in the books. Thank you
All
very much.
right.
Bob.
Good job, everybody.
All right. Any other business? Our next meeting, obviously, May 19th is our sequence. Were there any other sensitive topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of this meeting to come up? Hearing none, we'll move on to correspondence. We have Faye Whitney's resignation as the Planning Board Administrative Assistant, and I would think we should hear a motion to accept it with regret because she was definitely a valuable resource to them, as you saw firsthand, Tricia.
Yes, absolutely. So I move to accept her resignation with regret and much gratitude for all of her work with the planning board and the expertise she brought to the table every meeting. So sorry to see you go, Faye.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Tricia?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
And I am I. Martha Thurber's steering committee vote to recommend the consolidation of pre-K 12th grade up into Mohawk. You saw her cover letter back from, or her cover email back from April 18th, and in April 16th dated the 2 District 8 town recommendation report, 3 pages that were included in your packet. I think there was an ask, actually.
No ask.
It was just kind of a information about what they're doing.
Correct. It was to keep us informed, but in her forwarding of it, Martha Thurbers said, if any of the select boards would like to schedule a meeting for further discussion, they're open to such. So I thought I should ask, would you like to just accept this as information received? Thank you very much. Or do you want to have a session of questions for more information on it? I don't. It's been pretty consistently fed to us from Willow and others as it progressed through the process. But
I would agree.
so we'll just accept it as a communication. Thank you very much.
I have a question though. Did we miss, is there something on the warrant about the school budget?
Yes, it's in the omnibus article,
Oh,
Article
right,
7.
okay. Like, how did I miss that? Okay, good. Thank you.
That brings us to public comment and
Before you leave the sustainability study, I'm just curious, do we know what their next step is?
Yeah, it's in that
it's in
letter from Martha.
Yep. They, on April 29th, they held another meeting.
Right, I
And
saw that.
yep.
It's on
And
page 10, their
Yep.
next steps.
next steps. Yep. There's a itemized bullet list there under next steps. Page 2 of their,
Oh, yes. Okay. Got it.
I'll give you a minute to review that.
So, no, it sounds like there's a lot of continuing work and research and modeling and discussions, but the next step I was asking about is what's the next step in terms of engaging with the towns?
I think that's going to be coming next year, I would think, at our next annual.
Okay. I mean that is their plan then. I mean, because that's not specified here that they're envisioning this as a year-long set of next steps that will culminate in a town meeting vote. That was my question.
Well, I guess at the bottom, at the final note, they talk about developing a new regional agreement. And so that would have to be unanimously approved by all 8 towns. So that is going to be part of what they do. Though I agree, it's not clear in their next steps that they're going to come up with the new regional agreement.
They've got a lot of work to do before it's going to get in front of the voters for sure.
Mhm.
Where do you see the part about the regional agreement?
On the last page of the select board packet for today, under a final note, it says implementation of this aspirational vision for education in our 8 towns is ultimately up to the voters. There's work still to be done, including the development of a regional agreement. And then the last sentence of that paragraph is any changes to the current regional agreement must be unanimously approved by all 8 towns.
Okay.
Terry?
I guess they've left their timeline somewhat open then.
For that,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
I have one more question on one of the Warren articles, if I may. At the board's last meeting, Andrew, you had concerns with the CPA article for the BSC playground. And I've not done any more homework on your desire to tie that article somehow to Buckland. I did research that Buckland's not a CPA town. They did not have an article on their warrant to fund the playground. So I just wanted to let you know before town meeting that it's really, I don't know where you want to go with that, if that's your feeling or whether it's the board's feeling. I just kind of wanted to clear the air before town meeting.
Well, I did notice that the Finance Committee voted not to recommend that article, and for somewhat different reasons than the ones I raised. But um, though, I think that was one that I mentioned, but I think that the um, more the understanding for the public about how, nonprofit groups, whether it's the Mary Lyon Fund or this recreation or PTA group that's raising money.
You're frozen.
Froze up.
Capital budgeting that we do with Buckland for the elementary school is helpful for the voters to understand and to make decisions about what is a fair and equitable way to partner with Buckland on capital projects. So that's a question that I will raise. I was curious whether Buckland had put any sort of warrant article on that. Because I had heard rumor that they might be, but it sounds like they didn't.
I don't believe they did. I couldn't find it within their warrant.
Okay. Well,
So,
good to know. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess the group that brought this forward to the CPA committee will need to speak to those questions.
Yeah, and they had in one of their presentations, I forget whether it was to us or to the rec committee at one of the meetings I was at that they attended. They did say that Buckland had an amount, and I can't remember what the amount was, but they named a specific amount, and it may be that they have that from some other, like the money for the food pantry from their previous uh, community development block grant money or something, but there was some commitment that they
Hmm.
claimed from Buckland's behalf, but it wasn't through, as Terry mentioned, they're not a CPA town. So we'll have to wait and see.
so I'm just going to throw this idea out here for you all to ruminate on. I learned a lot in this year. And one of the things that I think, because we have this pretty persistent um, uh, complication with the town of Buckland for all these shared services, that in the future, not immediately, but something that would probably be beneficial for both towns to look into, and definitely for sustainability fiscally, is to consider merging
Merging.
and merging Buckland and Shelburne into the town of Shelburne Falls. I know it's a big idea, but
That's
other towns have thought about doing it. And there might be, I know some towns out east looked at it, and they got grant funding to actually do an assessment of what would be reasonable, or if it was feasible. And the thing is, we already share so many services that I'm not talking next year. What I'm saying is maybe it's something that we should look into for long-term planning for the town, that things are getting more expensive and we could get a teeny more economy of scale by working together. Or instead of merging both towns, work in, more regional agreements like this with other towns nearby, like, transportation for the school and all of those things. So I don't mean to blow up Shelburne. I'm just saying that administratively, that might be something that will need to be considered in the future.
interesting.
Gary, I love you. I'm not saying I want you to go away. I'm just
That would
so
do
you
it.
know,
That would be what
just so
would
you know,
happen.
that was not what my intention is. I was just thinking, bigger picture, farther down the road,
Yeah.
when you have your nice beach house and you're sipping a drink with an umbrella in it and reading a book.
Mm.
Uh, yes,
Certainly not the first person to suggest that idea. And in fact, I had a conversation with another person about that very topic, and we were sort of speculating about, and I guess my conclusion to that conversation is I did not think I was going to see that in my lifetime. So,
pretty sure neither of us will.
and I think that, when you look at to the west of us, to towns that are a tenth of our size, that are hanging on to their municipal identities, long past the point at which there's any economic efficiency to do so, it's really a testament, I think, to our, 300 or 400 years of history as New England shire towns that inherited this form of government from the crown. Long before we became the United States, we were operating this way, and we're kind of unique in the United States, that west of the Hudson, it's all county government all the way down. So will New England, get rid of its storied tradition as strong towns in an, English style government system? I'm not guessing that's going to happen soon.
I don't know. I mean, things are changing pretty rapidly elsewhere, so we might have to. And it may turn out that this would be the best type of governing structure moving forward with all the, other things start collapsing or getting reorganized. But I just wanted to put it out there because it was something that I've been thinking about a little bit. And, whoever's out there listening, it's not that I want to blow up Shelburne, okay? It's just an idea for sustainability, long-term, developing an economy of scale.
Very interesting. Appreciate it. Um, uh, at the very least, continuing to improve the communication between the two towns and working together on things that make sense, like we already do with the shared village fire district and water sewer and so on, is all prudent for sure, and see where it leads us one day.
I
But
would say Rick, if I can just conclude on that note, is that Tricia, I think that the one area where I could see real efficiency gains is by having a regular, maybe even series of meetings with the town of Buckland to hash out these shared services issues, because one of the reasons we kind of get stuck is that we don't meet together. And I think that could be really beneficial in terms of making these shared services more efficient and effective, and ironing out some of our grumpy grudges and things like that. And if we did, I think we could create models that other towns might be more interested in joining.
100%. I think that is such a great idea. And that would be a really great thing for Shelburne to pursue. And having those MOUs in place, like for the library and for all these other things that we've mentioned that, create a lot of friction. We're neighbors, we're small towns, friction doesn't work well in a situation like this. So I think that would be a great thing for the select board to take on. Just say, hey, we'd like to work out these things, start with something small and see how it works. And once you get that model, if you get a model that could be scaled to work with all the different types of services that we do together, that would be amazing. And yeah, definitely something that could be shared with other communities.
great. I think we got off track here a little bit on a side
Bye.
road. I think we should get back to public comment. Our last item. We do have one visitor with us. If you would like to make any comments, we'll give you the floor. And if I don't hear from you in a bit,
That would be Mr. Kingsley.
yes, the only one I see. So, just an observer then, no comment, and thanks for watching over us tonight, and we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll see you tomorrow night.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Right.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Mm.